This is an SM Media production. Hello, folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Betting Ring, SM Media's exclusive horse racing show. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure, as always, to be your host. It's been a wee while since we've been on. There's been a lot happening in terms of the horse racing world, particularly in the flat. It's a pleasure, as always, to welcome from the Scottish Daily Mail, Calum McClurkin. Calum, it's been a while since we've been here, but there's been a lot going on. How you been?
Yeah, hi there. Yeah, all good. Busy time, horse racing front. It just comes in quite weekly and quite regularly. A lot of topics on and off course that have had to be dealt with. And yeah, it's been enjoyable. Punting side of it largely frustrating, but the rest of it's been pretty good.
I don't. I'm being honest, right, and I always have this opinion at this time of the year. Like, I always try and get into the flat. There's always a lot of big meetings. It's good in terms of like betting heats and things like that. But this summer, I've kind of struggled a wee bit in terms of recent years, just in terms of like there's been a lot of big meetings, but it's so hard just to get a winner. I feel as if I'm punting and there's no much happening. I think it's a lot harder in terms of the jumps to get a proper winner. I found this year more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that can go wrong at speed. And when you get these small field tactical affairs, and it does become obviously tactical, and you can get a muddling pace and can get some kind of peculiar results. The big festivals. I mean, Goodwood's Glorious Goodwood. I mean, the ground there was. I mean, it varied every single day. It was very hard to keep track of. Some of the watering policies at Royal Ascot I didn't quite like. It was a bit softer than ideal, but then it wasn't described as kind of soft. It's kind of like that. I mean, it doesn't look too soft, but then you go to the finish and like they're really, really kind of paddling through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's ground that it's not wet enough to kind of just be soft to go through, but it's not dry enough to be good ground and record a decent time. So some horses just get completely stuck in it. It's kind of that grinding, difficult ground. Some horses just don't act on it. So and some bets can go by the wayside there. This season I've just had a lot of seconds. I've beat the price sometimes quite well. My column had eight last 9 weeks in my column. 8 of them were second. Um, Finally bucked that trend yesterday when Poker Face won at Deauville at Group 3 level. But even that, I was thinking this might get caught here, and it held on by 3/4 of a length. So yeah, I mean it's all fine margins. Punting wise, yeah, but it has been very difficult. I don't think you're helped by kind of these poor ground descriptions and a lot of falsely run races were at the front held on. Even at York, quite a lot of them held on from the front. I mean, it's a front runner's track anyway, that people would point to. But I think jockeys have got different confidence levels with these new whip rules, and I think because you can't use it that much anymore, I don't think you're kind of seeing kind of grinding tire horses coming from the back, needing kind of geared up to kind of win. Like maybe needing that bit of further persuading to kind of go through with their effort. And I think you've seen quite a lot of kind of canny rides from the front off a wee bit slower pace this season.
We'll get into York later on. We'll kind of look at all the kind of big races that happened over the week and kind of see where people are going next. But there was a lot in terms of a big kind of chat on the opening show on Saturday in terms of this kind of flat season. I was Matt Chapman in particular was saying that there seems to be a lack of a kind of sparkle horse in Britain now. This time last year, I was looking back earlier, we were having conversations about Bide being the best since Franco, and this season there's been a lot of good horses. There's a lot of horses that I would say are very serviceable and have done their bit in the division. But I kind of tend to agree that is there any horse that is at that kind of 130 level, which puts you in the kind of the top tier. It has been very difficult to kind of look at the divisions and say there's one real standout horse this season compared to others.
Yeah, it's been very tough. I think I've given about one or two that have been north of 120 this season. I think Paddington's been one of them as a 3-year-old. I think Mossadaf was the other, but that's been about it. Paddington, St James's Palace was brilliant. But again, it's kind of these small field, small horses where, I mean, the Pan didn't get beat at York, but I mean, he won the Irish Guineas, St James's Palace Stakes, the Clip Stakes. He won pretty much everything in between the Sussex Stakes and bad ground 3 weeks before York. So I mean, four Group 1s in 4 months is, and he's been on the go since end of March as kind of as a 3-year-old. So the racing likes to make comparisons. Like, I mean, so his comparison was kind of modern the Iron Horse and Giant Causeway in the way he's kind of going about it. There were signs that he wasn't that impressive taking on the Elders, because he just barely stayed the trip at Sandown, beating Emily Upjohn. The Goodwood Stakes was a poor renewal where he beat a French horse that I don't think a great deal of people would have known a great deal about by 2 lengths. But he toughed it out in bye ground. He's a good versatile 3-year-old, but he was subsequently found out. Whether that was, as Ian O'Brien said, stretching the band too much, may well be. And Mossadaf had very good tactics from the front that day. But yeah, he was the one that everyone was kind of hoping to be the best horse, and it's been hoping to find the star horse rather than there being one. Best horse in the world is probably in Japan in Equinox. Thrash Mossadaf. Maybe mile and a half's not his trip, but I mean, Westover's done okay for that form, and Equinox won that quite comfortably. So maybe the best horses are now kind of, I mean, breeding wise, are going over to Japan, and they're already kind of there, and their season's completely different to ours. I mean, they don't really come over for Royal Ascot that much. They didn't this year. One did from Hong Kong, a few from Australia do. Japan, the seasons just don't really marry up, so they stay there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into kind of looking back in the 4 days at York. We'll start with a Japanese bred horse. Continuous won the Voltigeur Stakes, beating Gregory. Now both horses are joint favourite for St Ledger. You have to put it up to obviously a very kind of tactical race. Obviously, Ryan Moore made it kind of up from the rear, whereas Gregory kind of dwelt the start. You have to wonder on a different day how that race would go. They're both sitting at 11-4. Regarding the St Ledger from this, who do you take away from it? Would you kind of prefer the winner over to Gregory if they did it again?
You would have to, in the bare face of it. But in the way it panned out, I mean, Frankie Dettori get rightfully so much praise over the 4 days, but this wasn't his finest hour.
No.
35 minutes before the big international as well. I mean, executed a brilliant front running ride. This was the polar opposite. There was pace pressure applied, and it was a furious pace. And he was the one that kind of only stayed there really, and then actually rallied to Castleway a little bit on the line. It's only a length behind him that was second. And continuous. I mean, Ryan Moore sat off that pace by got a good 8 lengths right at the start. I mean, he knew straight away that this was suicidal. He's come through, picked up the pieces. I think Save the Last Dance might be the Ledger horse in bad ground, and this fella's probably the Ledger horse in good ground, I would say. He's got a bit of pace, quickened by them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Ian O'Brien's a lot of options. I mean, Denmark shaped quite well in a big handicap off 97. That's form that probably wouldn't put you too far out of it. A couple Qatar horses, Valiant Kings. There are horses like that. The one that won the Melrose as well. They're not. They're in the picture. So yeah, I mean, something left field could come out and win this. As for Gregory, I think he's worth another chance in that, because that was a shot. It was a trip that's a little bit too short from. They clearly regard them, because they were mulling over going the Stradivarius way of Goodwood Cup. Then here the ground was, far too soft, bottomless. He would have left his Ledger behind there probably if he went there. I can see him bouncing back and being freshened up for a Ledger, so I wouldn't dismiss him. I'd probably side with him. I've got him the Queen's Vase double and Ledger double still on, and it still seems to be the plan. So I think in a muddling year at the moment, I think he wouldn't dismiss much, but I would still side with Gregory and give him another chance, particularly a bit of cover in a more conventional race.
From his kind of not so finest hour, I thought Dettori was magnificent in the Juddmonte with Mossadaf, just the way he dictated from the front, gave Paddington probably too much to do. Nazwa, I thought, ran a really good race in second, but it was a very, very good ride from Dettori on the winner.
It was prominent, it was aggressive. This horse does stay a mile and a half. So I mean, tactically, it was a well executed plan. We just don't really see him going from the front. So Jim Crowley's supposed to take the ride now. I mean, he likes to kind of come from the back and creep in. I just wonder if they've just flipped the tactics because that does suit the kind of new jockey for the day more, dictating something from the front. But that was the way to beat the favourite, and that's what they've done. I mean, thought Paddington, he ran well, probably a combination of both of like maybe one run too many and the trip kind of stretching him a little bit over a really sound gallop. But I mean, you've got to get the fractions right, and Frankie Dettori did, and it backed up his Prince of Wales win. Form in behind of that looked a bit kind of flattering to him initially. Adia retiring subsequently. I mean, only Luxembourg was the one that kind of ran his race that day, I thought. So interesting really going next with him. I mean, he wouldn't like bad ground, so I mean, the Champion Stakes ask at the end of the season would be up in the air. Gosling's thinking about going to Irish Champion, which would be a quick turnaround for him because he likes to be, he likes to go well fresh. So I think the Breeders' Cup Turf would be a cracking race for him, to be honest. Up in America, liked quick ground. He can be ridden handy now. And he's an established 120 rock solid performer. It's a 5-year-old wage, but he seems to be improving. So, yeah, in a division where it's been there for somebody to step up. He's been the one that's done that.
Yeah, I think obviously with Paddington as well, like he's kind of come on the scene. He had that really good performance in terms of winning at Royal Ascot. We all kind of like with Baid as well. Obviously, Baid did his day where he lost just on the day, he wasn't right. But I don't think you can knock Paddington just for the way he's been this year. And where do you think that you kind of think an Irish champion, or does he try an art? Does he go to Ascot? Like there's a few you can do with him, but nobody can knock the year he's had so far.
Oh, it's been brilliant. He's actually lit up the season. I mean, that race, the Junior International, would have been, it would have been greatly diminished if he wasn't there. It would have been like a 3-runner kind of joke. Most of that would have maybe probably won easier because he would be able to dictate more. As for where he would go, I think he's a miler, and I would give him a break and go back for the QE2 at Ascot at the end of the season. And they can kind of confirm his status there. And the mile division doesn't look great. I mean, Triple Time won the Queen Anne's, been beaten in France subsequently. I mean, it's crying out for somebody pretty decent. And I think Paddington only about a 120 miler, and I think that's easy dominate the division at the moment. So if they keep him on as a 4-year-old, I would like to campaign him as a top class miler. I think that's what they might do. I mean, these kind of small fields, I mean, you might as well go for these kind of races and go for them until they get beat, and that's what he's done. So, yeah, I don't think he's lost too much in defeat there. And I think stepping back trip would suit him because he's got a lot of natural pace and he deserves a wee break.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Let's move into the Yorkshire Oaks on the Thursday. Warm Heart won a really good race, beating 3-1 by a length. Both fillies are really good, I thought, in terms of 3-1 just coming from the back. Save the Last Dance, just couldn't keep the pace up towards the end. And what do you kind of take away for that race? Because there was a lot of kind of good performances, but obviously Warm Heart just won the day.
Yeah, it was about the only race that I called completely correctly all week with the 1-2. Yeah, see the Last Dance, and Ryan Mills just bounced out to try and make this a stamina test and give his filly the best chance. The trip and ground wasn't really suitable. That was kind of shown up at Epsom a little bit when beaten by Soul Sister. And Soul Sister done that fairly comfortably. 3-1 closing really well at the line. It was very close. It's beaten a nose or a head. Didn't get the gap in time. Stuck in a little bit of a pocket. Again, arguably not Tory's finest hour because he took care of her quite sensibly at Goodwood and bad ground, and then she flopped in the Hardwick. But she likes York, and horses that kind of just seem to pop up around York sometimes. It's a very fair course, but it sometimes just suits certain types, and it doesn't suit others. For some reason, they don't turn up there, and for some reason, they do. Free Wind is a York horse. But Warm Heart, it was a bit like the Ribblesdale, really. Mile and a half, fast ground, fairly handy. Got first running on the day and won. It's a very good horse. Where it would go, she will probably get an arc entry. It's probably a bit ambitious because she likes quick ground. She probably is a bit to find, and I think these middle distance fillies do have a little bit to find. I don't think there's an Albanese in there, but I mean it was an O'Brien Gosson race that they've dominated. They've won 7 of the last 10, I think. They split it up quite well. They are they prove themselves the best trainers with those type of horses.
Let's move into Friday with the Lonsdale Cup, the kind of long distance races. It's another case of they're just beating each other. Coltrane reversed the form with Courage Mon Ami. Obviously, both were beaten at Goodwood. It was a very different type of race. I thought Oisin Murphy was really good here, just the way he kept on at the end. The Tory, I think, would probably want his ride again. Maybe if in another day. I think it was just one of those days where Coltrane just was able to just keep going till the end, and the Tory probably wanted to be a lot closer to the pace.
Yeah, I mean it was a 2 mile sensible pace, wasn't it? I mean, Courage Bon Ami needs that extra half mile that they did at the Gold Cup, and only picked up Coltrane fairly late in the day that time around. This was kind of it was a more conventional race, and that placed a more conventional horse in Coltrane. He's a solid 2 mile, 115, 117 horse kind of thing. They gave Quickthorn far too much rope in Goodwood Cup, where he won. Hard to replicate that performance again, and Quickthorn didn't finish in third. Courage Bon Ami just didn't quite have the speed that Coltrane does over 2 miles. Just a more tactical pace and won. It was an uncomplicated ride for Oisin Murphy, and he was one of many jockeys in behind that was kicking himself that day at Goodwood, but he got it right then, and I think it gave him some much needed confidence because he came out and ridden quite well on Saturday. He's not had the best of seasons. A few rides have a few big rides maybe have kind of passed him by a little bit. Coming back for that long ban as well into the season, it's not easy just to go back, pick up, and pretend that nothing's happened and everything's fine, and and get back to that really high level instantly. It's taking a bit of time, but hopefully he can have a good end of the season now, because that was a big confidence boost, and I think he kind of saw that on Saturday when he had a couple winners as well. So he might kind of really build from that. You just hope if Kyprios comes back to any sort of form, he would kind of be much superior in the staying ranks, I would think.
Do you think we might see Kyprios at the season ender at Ascot? He's 6-1. I think that would be a price that would be right up your street if he was declared for this.
He would be, but I mean, again, it's one of those where he's 6-1 because we don't know how well he is. If he shapes with promise in the Ledger, he would go into like joint favourite. I think the Irish Ledger seems to be the kind of target. It's an optimistic one. Aidan O'Brien's kind of saying he wouldn't really be ready. He'd be ready for that time, but would he be ready for a race of that nature? Is a doubt. So yeah, it's a tough one. Maybe the Cadran an Arc Day, they might opt for that instead, and then come back for the long distance cup at the end of the season. I don't know. They will get a race into the end of the season, then we'll see where we're at. But it's a long absence, and yeah, there's enough kind of unknowns there. You'd like to see a bit more kind of upbeat bulletins before taking that price, I would think.
The none thought there was a turn up. Living the Dream for Adam West won at 28-1. It was a bit of a weird race. This obviously Highfield Princess has just been the kind of horse that it wins in a big day, but it's obviously won at Goodwood, but I think very much the Calum McClurkin of sprints. It's just been seconditis for most of the season.
Yeah, I guess we were back in that race.
I thought you might have had a look at it. I thought it was a great price, to be fair. I was surprised it wasn't. Was on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with sprinters, though, isn't it? I mean, they are more inclined to. I mean, if you're slightly off over that shorter distance, you will lose. There's not many ways to kind of. You don't really see horses 90%, at sprint trip win, because I mean so much can go wrong in such a short space of time. In York, and it's a blazing 5 furlongs. It's really quick ground, and the one that absolutely pinged the lids and won it was kind of like American style kind of racing, really. And that's why they're going to go Breeders' Cup next with Living the Dream, which is quite remarkable. I mean, I was astonished when it went. I mean, the trainer was completely in shock, and I was thinking, what price did that go off? But 80s or something, 28s. It wasn't totally unbacked. I wouldn't have given it much of a chance.
No.
Early gate speed though does kind of work wonders in Breeders' Cup Sprint. The Americans, it's got an American style racing and make it on, get the fractions right, holding on quite well. Maybe too many of them were expecting it to come back a little bit too much at the 2 furlong pole. I mean, I was kind of hoping Highfield Princess would be a little bit close and commit early. Was closing at the line quite well. Was it to be? But it's a great win for such a small train. I mean, Adam West, small trainer in Epsom, get 46 horses, and the post match, the post race interview was quite something. He couldn't hide his disbelief. It's probably still not sunk in for him yet. It's a career changing, borderline life changing victory. That I mean, I think he had 8 winners all year, and to have one like that, that just propels you straight to the top. I mean, it's probably dwarfed all his prize money it's had for a couple of years at least, in one race, with one horse. And I mean, it's where the dream came the reality inside a minute for him, and it took an age to pull up as well at the line. So we'll see if it's not a fluke. But I mean, obviously that kind of fight downhill, really sharp, fast ground has won the day, and it suited that horse the best, and he's come out and won. So yeah, it'll be Breeders' Cup's really the only place you can go after that.
The next race we'll talk about was on the Friday, Saturday. Obviously, the City of York and Ross obviously continued his really good run from Goodwood, won well. I think the Tory and Beckett will be licking their chops at the thought of going back up against Shaquille again.
Possibly. I think they'll stick to 7. I mean, the Sprint Cup, it will go there. He is an autumnal performer,
Do you think he'll go there that quick, or do you think they'll wait for later on?
They just keep rolling with him. It wouldn't surprise me if they took it in. The 40 would be the big day, the 7 furlong Group 1 in Longchamp on Art Day, and that's kind of his big target from the start. But yeah, there's a champion sprint at the end, which he would need Soft to be involved in. I wonder if he's got the pace for 6 furlongs, but I mean, he travelled very comfortably at York. That he's probably coming into himself a little bit better. If he's still in good form, and he's a rock solid operator, he's a very hardy horse. He would definitely take in Haydock as well. I would think. I wouldn't see why not. He just travelled. He breezed it. He was a Group 1 horse in that Group 2 race. So they're trying to get that to Group 1 status. Not sure if he can really. You've got maybe one of them could be. I mean, you've got the Hungerford that's a Group 2 the week before at Newbury, which looked like pretty much a Group 3 really last week. So would Newbury want that? Would you have to demote that to give that Group 1 status? It's all about the calibre of horses that run in it, and the calibre of horses that have been winning that race recently have been good, and Kinross has been. He's the best 7 furlong operator in Europe. It's simple as that, and he's shown why.
Final race at York was the Ebor. Absurd for Willie Mullins. He just wins everything, doesn't he? He could win. He could win dog races. To be honest, that'd be a dog trainer. He's just that good. The thing with this race is obviously, I think the right 2 horses or the 3 horses to be fair, came to the fore. I thought that obviously Sweet William was the well fancied horse. The Tory was majestic. I think I Love Your Dream was the horse I take away from this. Is probably the one that was probably just unlucky. I thought it was a really good run by the Godolphin horse. Yeah,
and off top weight as well, which put me off him. The draw put me off the winner. Sweet William, but 10-3, you can leave alone and something like that happens and you're cursing yourself. So, yeah, I mean, I did back one at an outside play with Berkshire Rocco, who ran quite well, and a couple others outsiders that didn't show. But if you get place money back at backing horses 20-1 plus, then you're going to do okay overall. And that's kind of been the nature of things. I like, just try and place pinch at the moment if you're out of form. That's what I've been trying to do anyway. Yeah, I mean, absurd. It was a brilliant ride from Frankie Dettori. I mean, he'd done it before. Trollman won kind of from a similar kind of keeping him wide early on and bagging that far rail, which he seemed to transcend to anyway. Hit the front plenty early enough, probably. Idled a little bit, not as much as the second did. and he's hung on to one. It's a big, massive form boost for Vauban going to Melbourne Cup. I mean, Vauban's not far away from winning a Yorkshire Cup. You know, I mean, a Group 1, Group 2 operator on the flat, really. I
Is
mean,
it surprised you how well he's done in the flat though? Or do you think that was always in his resume?
no, I really liked him at Royal Ascot. I mean, for that race, I mean, he was my kind of nap there, and he delivered, even though you're thinking, is the ground a bit too quick? Is it short of his optimum? And it wasn't, you know. No, when you've got a horse that's kind of that kind of high class over hurdles going on, I mean, he was almost hitting 160 there. I mean, if you're as good as that on the flat, I mean, you're gonna hit 110 quite comfortably. He's around that now. He's won an interim in Ireland. Melbourne seems to be the plan. Fast ground. I mean, good ground at Ascot to, fast ground over there, down under would be, a bit of a worry. He's about 61 for the Melbourne Cup, but if there wasn't not firm in the going description, he's going to get off clear favourite for that. I think he'd be very hard to beat. The Ebor winners, Frank, that form. People were talking about, well, Vauban could win this off top weight. Yeah, it's not without possibility. He probably would have on the evidence of the second, and I think Willie Mullins knew that by just keeping him for the big one there. And absurd, he's going to join him in Melbourne as well if they pass the kind of intense screening checks, which should probably whack off 2-3 points of the price and on these kind of foreign raiders, because they're quite stringent. If they find something, they find something. You won't run and you'll lose your money. So yeah, it's kind of waiting for it. But I mean, he is the one that seems to have an abundance of class. I mean, he looks like a Group 1 operator in the flat at the moment, right now, and hopefully he'll win a Melbourne Cup and come back and contest all these kind of very good group races. Hopefully with Kiprios in it and against him. Sweet Williams is a bit idle up front. I think they were the two that were ahead of the mark at the end of the day, and it came to the fore in the thirds. The third was bound to run kind of quite well, and they pulled quite comfortably clear out of Yukon Glen, who's running four of these now and ran quite well in fourth as a 10-year-old, which is quite a remarkable achievement. But there was a lot of kind of highly handicapped exposed horses in that race this year, and it kept the weights up and it allowed anyone with potential really to kind of dominate.
Obviously, the Ebor was the last race of Paul Hannigan. Obviously, brilliant jockey, two-time champion jockey. Obviously, won some big races. Won the Oaks with Tagruda, King George with Tagruda, two-time July Cup winner. Brilliant jockey on his day, and a sad end.
Yeah, it's got petered out. I mean, he had a bad back injury, didn't he, a couple of years ago, and that took a lot of effort to get back to. And I think his body was kind of telling him that that's enough, and it's important to go out in your own terms in horse racing, I think, and he's managed to do that. So, yeah, top class jockey, a champion jockey, 2 years running, first one in the Northern Circuit to win it as well, 2010, 2011. Then get the job with Sheikh Hamdan, of course, where he had a great association with Tagruda. Won big sprints with Wooten Bassett back in the day as well, and very consistent the North, and a good partnership with Richard Fye, winning 2 of the last 3 Norfolk Stakes at Royal Ascot. So he can certainly win on the big day, but he seemed a very kind of good, down-to-earth gentleman as well. Time for everyone. So wish him all the best. I think he's going to stay in horse racing, maybe in an agency kind of role thing as well. So anyone that's got him will be very happy.
Brilliant. We did ask some of our kind of regular viewers if they had any questions for us for our show. We got a few jump questions, which I'm keen to get back into. I'm kind of missing the jumps. I'm always at the kind of that stage where I miss the jumps. But we'll start with an art question actually that I'm keen to get your thoughts on. Is 7-2 a good price for Ace Impact?
Oh, well, he's the best horse in the race. It's all about stamina. So, but I think there's a couple you take one with that. I would say no. I thought he won quite well the last day. Jean-Claude Rougier said he was at 80-85% fit for that race, where he kind of overhauled Al Riffa. He showed a good turn of foot that day. He did the same in the French Derby. Now, that's a mile and a quarter. He won that French race last time out with Al Hakim, who had every chance going to the 1.5 furlongs out in the arc. He didn't stay. He finished fourth. Vidini was a kind of, would he stay, wouldn't he not stay? And he was stronger at 4 than he was at 3. Waltgeist was better with age than he was at 3. I just think as a 3-year-old, even though he's getting allowances on potentially deep ground, I think he might get outstayed in this. I think he might need another year to strengthen. And it was interesting that they're planning to go straight to the Arc and not take in the Irish champion,
Thought that was
which is something that they don't tend to do. And it's no bad thing. I mean, if you're sitting him in an Arc with decent prices, you think, oh, that's great, he's fresh, he's going to go in form, top form, which he would be. But I think another race of to experience something different, to kind of really kind of truly experience something, you know, at the very top level. I mean, winning your own derby, yeah, that's okay. I mean, Big Rock didn't get a run that day at all. Was favourite and wasn't far behind. You know, he's been second at a mile subsequently. The French form's generally holding up okay, but you know, he won a Mickey Mouse race. I thought that was a prep for the Irish champion. And then I think he's just a bit mindful of leaving his race in the Irish champion rather than the Arc Day, but I think he might need the experience even for an Arc, and I think the Irish champion would have provided that. And it doesn't look a hot race at the moment. So I think there's others he could take him on with. Feed the Flame being one at 8-1. Pascal Barry, 6 lengths behind Ace Impact in the French derby, but he won the Grand Prix de Paris going up to 1 mile 4. That's his trip. He would like soft ground. He's probably going to run the Prix-Nail as his prep, which would be a more suitable assignment and a less of a test than, well, it'll be more of a suitable assignment for a 3-year-old anyway, and less of a test than an Irish champion throwing him in the deep end there. I think an Arc would really suit him. And I think you'd get a lot closer to Ace Impact, who is doubtful whether he'd improve. And he also races quite keenly the favourite. You wouldn't get away with that in bottomless ground over a trip to going further. So, yeah, I think there's enough doubts to poke a hole in it. I mean, Hookham's a reliable horse. You know, he's going to be very hard to beat. He's going to be, you know, high rank. Westover as well. Those two for the King George are going to be, you know, decent senior players. There's not really a filly I quite like in the race. See the last dance maybe, but she looks a ledger tight. It looks a bit too slow for this. And the other one I like is Onesto, and it's about 40-1.
Right.
And he was about 10-11s last year, where he just didn't run his race. He ran the Irish champion last year. Was second at 11-1. A really good race that year. It looks a potentially a worse edition this year than this. But I mean, he went to Tokyo for one race, ran midfield, but he came back in Deauville. And he ran fourth over a completely unsuitable mile in a really good race. That was a very good comeback run. He's about 14s for the Irish champion. I think each way the plan is to go there and go Arc again. He's only had one race all season, so he should be quite fresh. So he should be able to take that in. The Irish champion stakes a bit better. He's rated around the 120 mark anyway. He's the one that's completely overlooked, and he looks set to run in both of them. For Fabrice Chappé, I mean, I would be inclined to look at him at a big price as well. So they're a couple of alternatives against the favourite.
Let's get into Cheltenham.
Okay.
What will go off favourite for all 4 championship races at the Cheltenham Festival? I think 3 of the 4 of these are easy.
Yeah, Stayers Hurdle was the one that you'd probably have a bit of doubt about, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, Champion Hurdle, obviously, I think the whole jump season for 90% of these horses in this betting all depends on what Constitution Hill does. The more time goes on and the more you don't hear very much, the more I think he's going to stay over hurdles.
Yeah, I think that's the percentage call, isn't it? I think it's more likely, maybe it was kind of 70-30. It's probably about 80-20 now that he's going to stay there. Yeah, I just think he's likely to stay. You haven't really heard anything for months, really. Maybe somebody has. I think Nico de Boinville did come out and say something, but I mean, it's probably pointing him towards staying over hurdles. Who knows? But yeah, talking about sparkle horses, I mean, the jump scheme has them in Constitution Hill and Gallop and Deschamps.
Yeah.
You know, the flat horse lacks them, and I think that's why people are kind of more drawn into the jump side of the game a little bit. they could.
He's still only 6 as well.
And
He's still only 6 as well. So if he has another year, you could see him obviously going for an Arkle at 8, maybe Champion Chase 9, Gold Cup 10. That would age on his side. There's still plenty of time.
yeah, and there's still room for improvement, and there's plenty in the tank, isn't there? I wouldn't want to have a crack at a Gold Cup as a 10-year-old, though, as your
No,
first time. I would kind of try and. I mean, if a chaser looks like a chaser, I think you should maybe try and crack on as early as possible, because you never know when you can get a setback in a game and you can lose a year quite quickly. So if the plan does derail, that would kind of definitely keep him hurtling, wouldn't it? If that happens. So yeah, I think. I mean, it's interesting with Perry passing. I mean, he's kind of the new kid in the block that might
yeah,
challenge if he stays hurtling. I mean, Willie Mullins is good. I mean, that's why. I mean, it seems that the indications now seem to be that he wants to keep State Man hurling. Why? You're just going to run
yeah.
second to him. I mean, I don't understand it. I think he's got scope over a fence. I would quite like to see him up and
Marine
trip actually over a fence.
Marine
But yeah,
National will do the opposite of what Constitutional does. I think that's been pretty much made. I think Barry Connell came out and said that, like not like in so many words, but I think he said we're waiting to see what happens. Like that tells me whatever the king does, we'll do the opposite. Because I
yeah,
don't think there's
he's
going to
been
be
a
any
bit more
issues with
vocal.
Facile Vega.
He's been a bit more vocal. I think he's going to go Arkle.
Yeah,
Marine National. The markets already say that. There's 3-1 for that, which is
it's ludicrous.
it's dispiritingly short, isn't it?
Yep.
You can see why. But I mean, bookmakers just take zero chances these days. But yeah, Constitution Hill, he's going to go off. Yeah, I think he'll stay hurling. He'll go off odds on for champion hurdle again, possibly even shorter than this year.
Yeah. Champion Chase, El Fabiolo looks very much to be the one that is going to kind of come from the novices. Energamine is 7-2. We've got Constitution Hill 5-1, John Bond 7s, and then you get Edward Stone 16s. El Fabiolo and Energamine, do we think that could be a matchup of matchups if they're both kind of going in this division, or does he split them?
Don't think he can split them. I mean, the only way you split them if one goes up and trip, they might be a bit tempted to maybe do. But Energy to defend his title. I mean, and there's different ownership as well. I mean, yeah, I think they'll take them on. The initial interest for me is who would Paul Townend ride, because I mean, Munir and Suede have their own jockey in Darryl Jacob. But if El Fabiola is improving the way that the market thinks he'll improve, he'll go off favourite for this. Do you hop off the two-time defending champion Chase winner to ride El Fabiola instead? It'd be a big decision. It would be a big kind of. It would cement the minds of people of who should be on. What Paul Townend picks. So it looks like between this stage it's hard to see anything else
Yeah.
challenge for favouritism at the moment. El Fabiola or Energamine. Maybe stick with Energamine at the moment because he's proven. But if El Fabiola does kind of tidy up some of the kind of loose jumping a little bit, and he's going to take a world of beating. He's certainly going to be the biggest challenge Energamine's faced in a long time.
The Stairs Hurdle division does not look that good already. I know that's an early situation. Gaelic Warrior sits at 5-1, and Perry Pass, Vauban, Tia Hupu, who I think could be one that maybe kind of improves this year. One interesting one, and I think all reports are that they seem to be going down this route with him, as a Hoyson Yaw.
That would be interesting. I mean, how they split up him and Corrick Rambler. Yeah, if that is true and that's inkling, that would be an early season warning sound to me. I wouldn't really see why. I mean, his confidence wasn't knocked from the Cheltenham Gold Cup in his injury run, so I mean, I think he's still pretty competitive over fences. Maybe they're inclined to just split them up, and that's the easiest way to do it, and go back over hurdling. There's a better hurdling. I mean, you could put Corrick Rambler over hurdles at that level, could you really? So yeah, you can see that maybe we've got a star kind of coming up in Apple away again, and they've got kind of good kind of upcoming horses coming through the ranks. So maybe having an established high class hurdler and an established high class chaser be the way to go. I think that's more of a vote of confidence for Corrick Ramble than it is for a Hoist and York, if that is the case. But as for favouritism, I think Gaelic Warriors parachuted there out of default from the young base. Can't have him left-handed as a favourite. I would prefer Teahupu. I think he proved a lot of the question marks in the mind for a Cheltenham Stairs hurdle correct. He got the trip fine. The ground wasn't too much of an issue either way. He's young enough to improve again. I think he'd tick a lot of boxes. Gaelic Warrior, like he's ridden to best effect in the Ballamore. He hugged that kind of rail in between favourite where he could get a jump straight. There was no kind of question mark coming out. And while he's ironing it out, you can't really trust him at short prices around a left-handed track. I certainly can't anyway. So even though the division looks weak, and he's the one that's kind of got staying potentially, might be different class of these, and you're taking advantage of a weak division, stuff like that. I think Teahupu could improve, and he was thereabouts last season. He's a one from last season that should improve a little bit better.
Galloping Deschamps is 2-1 for the Gold Cup. What do you think?
Fair enough.
Even though he's been beat.
Punchestown's.
I know,
anything
but
could beat there. End of season. I mean, you can throw it out really. You can throw that out. I think. That doesn't bother me. Bit of boost for Grand National form and fast or slow and Corrick Rambler, but I mean there. Corrick Rambler would be. It's a higher step up, and he's going to peak for that day, isn't he? You're looking at Jerry Calum, maybe the one that can genuinely challenge. He should reverse form with a real whacker over a Gold Cup trip. The market's got that spot. Galloping Deschamps, he's for a really big day, not an end of season kind of fair where it's a bit of a bonus. And he put a big effort that day, and in comparison to what he did to the horse that he conquered in Brave Man's Game, it was better than that. So Brave Man's Game's got a bit more to prove than Galloping Deschamps, and regardless of Punchestown for, even if you take that in face value, which I think is form that's quite hard to assess at the best of times because it's really the end of a long season for most of them.
Well, next question is there any horses you've been made aware of for the upcoming National Hunt season? We've seen a couple in terms of like Aurora Vega, Mystical Pill. There's been a couple of impressive ones. Before I give you the lowdown on the 3-year-old French horses there's a brilliant article on Twitter or X now that will tell us all about the 3-year-old French horses. But anything caught your eye in the jump so far?
Not a great deal. I mean, Aurora Vega was good in the second time around. That's a bumper that Marine Nationale won last year. That suggests there'll be plans for going hurdling. I suspect there is. Willie Mullins is saying one out that early in the season. It's already had a run. You won't be spending too much time over bumpers, I imagine. So yeah, a bit of a break and then crack on with a good maiden hurdle. So with an eye to probably being forward for a Royal Bond, and then you can decide whether you want to go Supreme or Mayor's Novices. I mean, I think that would be the plan. That would be the plan with her, I'd imagine. Those that remember the Cheltenham Review show will remember that I quite like Salvador Ziggy for a National Hunt chase, and he won a match race at Killarney, which is a bit of a joke, but he beat a 140 rated rival by 12 lengths pretty easily. So Race Galvin won very early on to kind of shed his maiden tag before he went national hunt chase. Now, I'm not saying this horse is Galvin like, but I mean, when he was second, the pair Tomps, he screamed chaser to me, and he ran well off top weight, really off 147. He's going to be at least as good as that over fences. If he finds £10, which I think he's already confirmed that he's a mid 140s horse. He's got £10 to find to be a kind of really kind of one to beat the National Hunt chase. He is the default favourite now at 12s. I was scanning around though.
He was
the
good
only
that
thing
day
I've done.
Punchestown. He beat that Richie horse. Was it Hubrisco? He won that. Was that in kind of early June?
He won that convincingly. I mean, for summertime, they weren't Mickey Mouse races that he's won. It's it's confirmed the impression that I thought he would give over fences. It's a Galvin, like, I mean, Galvin had 2 races and then break, went to Cheltenham, won that, and then had a break for the festival, and then duly won it 2-1. Now, I don't think he's quite that level yet. He could develop into it. It's that type of preparation. People have caught on National Hunt chases about 12-1. I mean, I said in the review show that I would be scanning around. He wasn't priced up for National Hunt chase then. The best I could get was 20s. When he was first introduced, I mean, you get 12s now. 12 might not be a bad play, but when Gordon Elliott muted the Kerry National, I kind of went, well, that's a bit of a kind of tougher handicap race to kind of throw him in. Are you trying to model him into a handicap? Well, don't forget that he could be kind of graded class. I mean, there's that October meeting, that race Galvin won. It's a pretty straightforward race for a horse like that to kind of plunder. I thought he would kind of maybe stop there and then take him there in October, and that would be that. He might take one more in before there. Give him a sight at Cheltenham. We know he operates quite well at Cheltenham anyway with that performance. But you'd like to see it over fences. So that kind of put the handbrake on a little bit of him. But I think he's one to kind of note for that particular race. It's a race that cuts up. It's a race that Elliott and Mullins kind of pretty much exclusively dominating. And he looks like the obvious Elliott contender at the moment. Willie Mullins probably has something, but I don't think he'll have a horse that is, as much of a highly rated maiden as Gal de Menil was. So I think 12s is it's just about interesting enough. 12.
Do you remember my pick for the National Hunt chase?
No.
I Am Maximus. That was my first anti-post pick, and he won the Irish National the week after.
He won the Irish National. Yeah,
that is a sore
off that plan.
Yeah, but there's I'm kind of leaning. I did like Salvador Ziggy that day in that race at Punchestown, so I wouldn't be against that either. Can I have a couple of minutes to talk about 3-year-olds, because I've seen a great piece on Twitter. So obviously with 3-year-olds, we know a lot of them are coming from France. There's a brilliant article on Wix MP, which tells us all about 3-year-olds that have come over from France and where most of them have ended up. There is a couple of French horses that have went to Venetia Williams, but they are 4 years old that I've been told to keep an eye on. Almerinda, who's going to be owned by Venetia Williams, and Lady Pretender are 2 horses that are apparently really good. Both, I think, have been rated about 100 on the flat in France. Oliver Greenall, Josh Guerrero have got a horse called Jean de Mont, who I think is a 5-year-old as well. One to keep an eye on as well. Obviously, Aroko was one they did it with last year. You'll be surprised to know that a lot of these French recruits have been sent over to Mr. W.P. Mullins.
How many barns does he have?
Yeah, well, surprisingly, none in the colours of Rich Ritchie, which I found quite surprising with this. A lot of them have went to Munir and Suede. There's one I've been told really good at 118 on the flat, which is a filly by the name of Mr. Jeef, who apparently is with a really impressive performance. Salvador Monday, you might see him on top of the Triumph Hurdle betting. He has went to the Donnellys. She has went to the Donnellys, sorry. She was rated 110 on the flat. 113 in the flat, a horse called Cargesi for Kenny Alexander. Apparently very, very similar. I think same breeding as Gallimar So. I might be wrong on that, but I'm sure I read very similar in terms of Gallimar So. One Bunting will end up with Tony Bloom, 2020, a colt. Gordon Elliott has a couple. Gala Conte has went to Rob Coeur, and they've got one for Gigginstown by the name of Kale de Bourbon. Willie Mullins has got one for Gigginstown by the name of Gold Dancer. Munir and Suede have got a few in terms of their interesting. Gigginstown have got one. The Donnellys have got one. The Tulleys have got 2, Highwind and Gorfito. Nicky Henderson, one of the Donnelly, Sergino, I think, sitting about 25s in the Triumph market. Paul Nichols has got one that's really, really highly thought of, Cabral de Mathan for Paul Nichols. So again, a lot in here. The Bromhead, Hispanic Moon, MK Marega. I've never heard of that owner of you.
No, off the top of my head. No.
Colours don't look familiar either, but there's a lot of interesting 3-year-olds. We'll obviously have a lot more to discuss on them once we kind of know them and see them, but we're all just looking for the next big novice, aren't we? We're all just looking for the next big up and comer. There's one called Jigme that I think went to the Tulleys that is favourite for the Triumph Hurdle. Don't back him because he is going to stud. That's what I've seen on that. So yeah, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on for. Remember some of these names because I think by the end of the year we'll certainly be talking about them as potential Cheltenham contenders.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find them at the start of as early as now, you can just compile a long list, keep them in mind, check them on probably a weekly basis at the moment, and if they pop up on a horse track, I'll stick them in, and you'll find out where they're debuting earlier than most. So I think that would be a decent idea of how to maybe get a kind of early season edge. There's no harm in doing homework as early as possible if you're inclined to go that way. The October meeting probably when it kind of really starts, and then betting wise probably a bit later than that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we're going to be back on kind of roundabout kind of art time. We'll have a lot of interesting thoughts then. But thank you very much for coming back on, Calum. We'll catch you down the road. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, the rest of the flat season then will be in jumps mode.
Very much into Cheltenham mode. That's all it is. Thank you very much indeed, folks. We'll see you all soon. Cheers.